He was born in 1956. He's an African-American Baptist minister and radio and television host based in his native Shreveport, Louisiana. When he formerly resided in Garland, Texas, he was president of the NAACP chapter there. Let that sink in. He was president of the NAACP chapter. He was one of the first black children to attend Lakeshore Junior High School in Shreveport at the beginning of the school desegregation in the late 1960s. He graduated in 1974 from Fair Park High School in Shreveport. He holds a master's degree in theology. He was ordained as a minister and has served several church positions. The C.L. Bryant Show, subtitled America on the Edge. Is it America or American?
Just the C.L. Bryant Show. Just the C.L.
It airs weekday evenings from 5:30 to 7:30 in the Central Time Zone over KEEL radio in Shreveport. And if you can't get Shreveport, you can go to your computer and get it off your computer.
That's right.
It's 710, is that right?
That's right.
Often he shares the microphone with a white partner, Stephen Parr. He was born in 1972, another young person. Formerly the meteorologist for KSLA-TV, the CBS affiliate in Shreveport. The C.L. Bryant Show compares loosely to Rush Limbaugh in Moon River. He is a member of the Republican Party and the Tea Party movement, which he has defended against allegations of racism. Often at odds with liberal leaders in the African American community, Bryant in March 2012 criticized Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton for their role over protests stemming from the controversial shooting of Trayvon Martin in Florida. Bryant is the founder of the group One Nation Back to God, which has a website. In 2012, he produced and released the independent film documentary Runaway Slave, which is this. It's a movie about the race to free the black community from the slavery of tyranny and progressive politics. He authored the 2010 nonfiction book, Lead Us to Temptation, Deliver Us to Evil. The Mississippi Tea Party has sponsored him at rallies in Jackson and before the Mississippi legislature to speak on conservative issues. We are very proud. He is our friend. And I give you my very good friend, C.L. Bryant.
I trust that you can hear me. I will probably blow this thing out.
We're turning it down.
You can turn
Are
it
you
off.
able
We're
to hear
turning
me?
it down.
Pretty good?
It has a switch on it, so you
Okay.
can turn off.
I'll just leave it there for that purpose. You can't hear me? You can't hear me? Okay, then you can hear me now.
Yeah.
Friends, I want to thank Laura Van Overshell for inviting me to come today. And of course, all of you here at the Mississippi Tea Party and this fine Agree to Agree seminar, symposium. Along with me is my wife of 41 years and the mother of my 4 children and 11 grandchildren. So what you had to say, Doctor and ladies, is incredibly important to all of us. Also in the back is a gentleman that I travel the country with almost every month. We're somewhere else in the United States, and that's Alan Page. Both of us he is the regional director of Freedom Works, grassroots organization here in this region of America. Freedom Works is the largest grassroots organization in the country. We boast 6.9 million activists on the ground that we're very proud to work along with. So my friends in media also include Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, as well as they have been on my program often, and I on theirs. This movie, Runaway Slave, has been mentioned as one of the top 10 documentaries ever made. We're very proud of that. If you get a chance to see it, get a chance to view it, if you should walk away with it today, I'm sure you'll see why. Everyone is in it from Dr. Thomas Sowell to Glenn, this was the last, of course, film appearance of Andrew Breitbart, a really great friend of mine. And Herman Cain, you mentioned Colonel Allen West. All of them are in this film, including Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, and those who hate me. But that's okay. My friends, be sure to download the free app, the C.L. Bryant Show. C.L. Bryant Show, you can tune in anywhere in the great nation of ours. Follow me on Twitter at Rev C.L. Bryant. 37 years I have dedicated my life to preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. Pastored 3 churches from California, Florida, Louisiana. And of course, our website is theclbryantshow.com. Now, with all that said, I am a senior fellow with FreedomWorks as well. And again, I'm with one of my favorite people in all the world, Alan Page. And I thank God for the opportunity to be here with you. And I want to thank him for our men and women in uniform around the globe who defend our right to speak our mind in the great nation of America. And I believe that America is the greatest success story the world has ever known. The price of liberty, Thomas Jefferson once said, is eternal vigilance. That means that we constantly have to be on watch, all the time. Not just partial watch, we have to be vigilant about what is going on in this nation. One of the things that drove me from the NAACP and led me to a more conservative lifestyle as far as politics was concerned is the fact that I was vigilant over who was controlling the agenda. I received a directive back in 1989 by then National NAACP Director Dr. Benjamin Hooks, who has now gone on to his reward, to go and speak at a pro-choice rally. Being a Christian education teacher and outreach minister for my church, I could not do that because of my core value beliefs. So I sent a directive back to him, or correspondence back to him, saying that I can't do that. And my star that was rising in the organization abruptly began to set. And I told my wife, I said, you know, they don't just want to control me. They want to control the agenda and me and use me as a tool to control a group of people. I saw the handwriting on the wall, and I saw the design that was taking place to make a prototype out of a group of people that would not only affect them at that point in time, but it initially and eventually would affect all of America. And what they did was affect my right to say what I wanted to say to that group. And that leads me to why I have come here to speak to you today. It's because there is a design. One of the reasons I asked the question that I asked to you, Doctor, is this: there's a design in all of this to undermine the very fabric of this nation. And because we sit idle, because we are asleep, while the enemy is planting seed in the field of American hearts and in the field of the American future, if we're not vigilant, if we don't watch, not only the people that we send to office, and I'll speak a little bit on that as well, but if we don't watch and speak out against the various legislations that are going on in this country as we speak, we will wake up with a nation that is not only in the process of being fundamentally changed, we will wake up in a nation that has indeed been fundamentally changed. You see the signs of it everywhere. It's taking root everywhere. And while so many of us are asleep, this place with this type of venue and this type of program should be packed, but it is not. So we speak because we have the right. The story of mankind is a story of human tragedy and pain. Most often it is self-inflicted. Part of that self-infliction comes from us not paying attention, from us not being vigilant to those who would become tyrants. And believe me, there are people who you have elected to office, or you have allowed to become elected to office, who will and are becoming tyrants in your presence, even though they did not present themselves as tyrants when you elected them. There are people who are seduced by Washington, and I'm in and out of Washington all the time. It's always good to get back home to Louisiana. Jane and I not only live in Shreveport, we have a little farm outside there in Grand Cane, Louisiana. It's been in my family since right after slavery for 149 years. And I still hold on to it because the sanity, the common sense of America lives in what they call flyover country. We have a privilege. We've always had the privilege of making our personal choices. But I think that here in our nation today, we're forgetting that wrong choices and bad choices have consequences that you have no control over. So my friends, you can choose for yourself whatever it is you want. We can allow to happen whatever it is you stand by and allow to happen. But there is one thing that you must keep in mind. There is one thing that you should keep in mind. That even though you have the right to choose for yourselves the things that take place in your community, you have no control over the consequences that will most certainly ensue if in fact your choices are infused with our folly. That is what we see so many times as folly. Choices that are made for pleasure. Choices that are made simply because it feels good, it sounds good, it looks good. Friends, for thousands of years, the freedom to speak openly about our personal grievances to higher authorities was, in many times, pushed down, stomped down, and shut down, and unjustly rewarded with prison or with death. Until one of our founding fathers, by the name of Thomas Jefferson, decided to pen these words. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. That's a part of the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. Until he uttered those words for thousands of years, men throughout the world found themselves in countries where if they spoke about their grievances, they could be imprisoned. If they spoke against the king or his hand, they could be imprisoned. But Thomas Jefferson, I believe, under the divine inspiration of God, because, yes, he was an old white man, he was a slave owner. My parents, my great-grandparents were slaves in this country. But let me tell you something. I hear and I see so many around this country, some of them of color, some of them of progressive liberal backgrounds, who are always attacking this old white man who penned the Declaration of Independence. But let me say this to you, and this is a message that you must say to everyone who comes into conflict with the spirit of this document. He may not have had me or anyone of my color or my hue in mind when he penned these words. But I say to you here in the sovereign state of Mississippi that when he penned these words, we hold these truths to be self-evident. That all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And among these is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When he penned those words, he guaranteed for then and all time to come that I, the son and great-grandson of former slaves, would stand here in the free state of Mississippi, a free man, speaking to the sons and daughters, perhaps, of former slave owners. We together are able to have this discussion because of the freedoms that our Constitution grant me. As far as speaking, he guaranteed that the day would come. And it has come. We hear the words of a lady asking Benjamin Franklin, Mr. Franklin, after the First Continental Convention, what type of government have you gotten us? He says, I have gotten for you a republic, if you can keep it. My friends, if we were able to look down through the annals of time and speak to Benjamin Franklin, those of you who have taken the time to come here to this symposium today, we would be able to say to Ben Franklin, Mr. Franklin, 240 years would have passed, and our country from its infancy in 1770, 89 actually, our country through its adolescence, through the 60s, and now our country through its young adulthood has held and we have kept the republic. But the question has to be, how much longer can we hold it if we continue to allow the enemies of the republic to have the free hand that they have? And so my prayer always is that God will teach our fingers to fight and our hands to war against the enemies of the republic. And friends, when we think about the importance of the First Amendment, you have to think about the words that the Declaration of Independence ends with. It ends like this, and we are to support, we will support this declaration with a firm reliance on divine providence. We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. What would make men who had fortunes, what would make men who had comfortable lives, what would make men who had great honor pledge to one another to defend this particular document of independence against the crown of England, when they knew that in signing such a document, it could mean that they would all swing from trees. What would make them do that? Well, I'll tell you what it was. It was the alternative. It was the alternative of living free as men, making your own choices, making your own decision, or living at the feet of tyrants, on your knees as dogs and enslaved. And I believe with every ounce of energy in me that spirit is still alive in America. One of the reasons I did this film was because I could see that there was something slipping away inside the American fabric, that if we lost it, we would truly lose the republic. And that is the idea that we're all the sons and daughters of runaway slaves. What do I mean by that? The Pilgrims, when they left England, they had no guarantees that they would ever see dry land again. They had no guarantees that they would live through the journey of the voyage from England to the Massachusetts Bay Colony. They had no guarantees. But they were running away from the tyranny that they saw in King George, King Charles in England. They were running away from that. And so it was with the slave who was on the plantation. He did not know where freedom was. He did not know if he'd ever see freedom if he ran away from that system of slavery. But all he knew that there was freedom somewhere. And even if it cost him his life, he would run away from that system of enslavement and find it for himself. And so, my friend, the common thread in all Americans is this. Whether your ancestors came here on the Mayflower, or whether they came here in the hulls of slave ships like mine, in the DNA of every true American is still a thirst for liberty and freedom, and friends, that must never go away in this country, and we must defend that. Our children must never lose that part of who we are. But they are losing it. They're losing the endowment that we have been blessed with. And they're losing it by design. America has forgotten the voice that they have. America has forgotten the entire package of the First Amendment. And that is that power that the Fed has comes from your home, comes from your neighborhood associations. It comes from your city councils. It comes from your school boards. Wherever you live, the power that the Fed has comes from you. But there's something very backwards that is going on now. There's a message that the federal government is sending to states like North Carolina and Mississippi and Texarkana, Arkansas. They're saying that they're going to withhold your money from you if you don't do what they say. That's how backwards this is. And somehow we feel, and certainly our children feel, that we have to bow to that type of pressure from the federal government. Let me tell you something. And this is what you need to tell them. We lend you our power. And if you do not respond to we, the people, and I say this across this nation, if the federal government and the people that you send to state office, federal office, do not respond to you, then you need to tell them to get their bags, pack their bags, and get out of our state houses and get out of our national houses, because we lend them our power. and we lend them our voice. We lend them their right to their own First Amendment. The press is sold out, cannot be trusted. Since Watergate, when they actually forced Richard Nixon out of office over 18 seconds of a blank tape. And Hillary Clinton today has 36,000 emails that we'll never hear from again. And hey, folks, if you think she's going to be indicted, forget it. It's not going to happen. I would speak about that right now, but I'll move on. It's by design. 1 Thessalonians, or 2 Thessalonians 2:11 says to us that God will send a strong delusion in these latter days, that men and people would believe a lie. And that is exactly what is going on. There is a strong delusion that is sweeping over this nation, and your children are the target. I don't know if you've ever heard the term data mining. Data mining. You want to become familiar with that term because it most likely is already happening in your schools, your public schools. It begins around the 4th grade. What they do is target your child without your knowledge. And they ask little Johnny or Susie how they feel about themselves. Do they feel sometimes feminine or masculine, or like a girl or like a boy? They ask them those types of questions, in subtle ways. And then Johnny and Susie come home. You ask them, how was their day? All you're wanting to hear is, I was okay. They're welcome to go ahead and get their homework and play till dinner's on. But you never ask the probing questions. What did your teacher talk to you about today? Not only are they data mining little Johnny and Susie about themselves, they're asking them about you. You see, the LBGT or the LGBT community and their agenda didn't just materialize out of thin air. They had to know within the structure of what they're trying to do in fundamentally changing this country that they had the minds of your young people. That's the only way they can pull it off. The only way they can pull it off is to make your young people think you're stupid and that they can be trusted. How do they do that? They do it because, as I mentioned earlier, we are asleep. While the enemy is sowing seeds in our American field, and the only harvest that we have coming up is our children. Why do you think so many of them can support a socialist? And then I got news for you. I am a Republican, I am a conservative, and I am above all a Christian. But it bothers me when I hear this statistic, two statistics. One, for the first time in American history, you have nearly 50% of American children between the ages of 7 and 17 who have never been in a church. Now, regardless of what your religion is, that means not a mosque, not a synagogue or anything. They have not been exposed at all to that. And also it explains to us why young people 17 to 25 who support a socialist like Bernie Sanders, says that if he is not elected, they'd be very happy to vote for Donald Trump. About 50% of them say that. Now I want you to stop and think a minute. It doesn't matter what your politics is on it. Trump is who we have as Republicans, so I haven't put the jersey on yet. It's laying on the bed, but I haven't put it on yet because of the statistic I'm about to give you, or the information I want to share with you, or hopefully turn this light on. There used to be such a wide divide between socialism and republicanism that no one who was a socialist could possibly consider voting for a Republican. What does it tell us? It tells us that that gap has narrowed to a point where it can be jumped. It tells us, as I heard someone else say earlier, that there's very little difference in the minds of Americans of this two-party system, especially when Bernie Sanders, who is not a Democrat, can run and nearly win, although that was never going to happen. The nomination for the presidency of the Democratic Party. Donald Trump, well, that's another story. But there is a program. Your child is being programmed. They're sending into your homes from schools, if your children are still in public schools, they're sending home to you a programmed, government-operated tool. That's what's being sent home to you daily. And that child, as far as they are concerned, is a tool of change that is taking place, even as you may be here and your grandchildren. It is taking place. And let me tell you something, if you are unaware, your children are even more so unaware. And my friends, the prescription for takeover by legislators newly elected is that they are co-opted when they go to Washington. They're co-opted by people who want to teach them the ropes. As I said earlier, Washington is a very seductive place. And the people you elect to be your voice, when you say my congressman, you better make sure that that is your congressman. You better make sure that they are yours and you are not being set up to become their pawns. Because that is exactly what so many of them want you to become, is their pawns. Now, finally, you are being inundated as conservatives, Republicans, grassroots people, Christians, with words like intolerant, words like profiling. There are things that we should not tolerate. And profiling was the first lesson all of us learned to stay alive. You remember your parents telling you not to play with that kid. Stay away from that neighborhood. Your parents were teaching you to profile. It's very common to profile the street that you're walking down if you happen to walk down the street in the dark. You had better profile if you want to stay alive. And America needs to take inventory and profile the things that are sneaking up on us in the dark. Things like sharing bathrooms with people who are born a man or someone who was born a woman. Let me tell you, it's a very simple remedy that I leave everywhere I go. If a person does not have a womb, that person is not a woman. And if that person has a womb, then that person is not a man. There's nothing discriminatory about it. That's just a fact. I don't care how you may feel about it. If you are not a wombed man, you are not a woman. And if you have a womb, you're not a man. Regardless of what you make yourself appear to be. And friends, there is a direct, head-on collision that is about to occur in this country. In fact, the next civil war in this country will occur over two issues: abortion and the LGBT movement. Why? Because homes are divided by it. Churches are divided by it. States are divided by it. And you have to decide if you are going to take a stand. So there has to be a collision. There has to be a decision made by you. And then as I close, we cannot act in our freedom of speech just out of anger in response to something that we don't like. We must act out of a sense of total analysis of what the horizon and the situation on the horizon calls for. I fear and I am concerned, better word, that the same type of emotionalism that swept Barack Obama into office because of the color of his skin may also be fanned to sweep in a Hillary Clinton. And yes, even though I like the rhetoric, all of us do, of make America great again, I am concerned that just because there is a vote of anger and distrust of government, we make a decision out of that anger. Many of you have acted and made decisions poorly over the course of your life out of anger, only to realize later on a cooler head, if it had prevailed, would have brought about a convention of states, would have brought about the remedy that we truly need. And so, my friends, yes, it is time for us again to hear the words of our founding fathers and to unite ourselves together in understanding that the alternative to not pledging to one another once again our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor hinges upon us mutually agreeing that we will have each other's back and and that we will hang together, because the progressive liberals, if we are not careful, will surely hang those of us of certain principles separately. The republic is still worth saving. And as I travel across this country, sometimes shaking unfriendly hands, sometimes finding myself in perilous situations, it's always good to know that there are men and women like you here in places like Jackson, Mississippi, who are praying not only for the republic, but praying for me. And there is a question that you must continue to answer until the great general calls you home. It is a question that your children will have to answer if we leave them this republic. And Jackson, I am going to ask you this question today as I leave you. Are there any patriots in Jackson, Mississippi left today? Is there anyone here who will stand up for God and country? Who will stand up for American principles? Who will stand up for the republic? Then patriots, stand up! Stand up! Stand up! God bless you! God bless America!